this has been the most difficult decision that we have had to make. We weren't sitting down there waiting we were working all the time, working on this relationship to see how we could get together. So I just want to put that straight. That we have stayed on all the time in the hope that things will get better. The Labour Party, the Labour Party, I was born in that. Biologically, I'm Labour. That's my DNA. But it is time now to move it to a new construct, a new dispensation. And something that the Labour Party believes that this isn't foreign to the Labour Party. This is foreign to Dr. Douglas. This is because Dr. Douglas doesn't really understand what the Labour Party is about, you know. He's an imposition. He's managed to fool the people. And so, this is what we're talking about. But I'm ready for debate. I'm ready to challenge. Because I know where I stand. So much for that, for the enemies. I don't have an enemy, no enemies at all. No enemies at all. Ask the people in my constituency. Ask the people in my constituency. Ask the PAM people, ask the CCM people, ask the NRP people. Ask all the people in my constituency how I interact and deal with them. Ask them. That is why I'm going to win the constituency again. Because all the people there are going to vote for me. The majority of Labour people and all the West people will vote for me. So it's ain't a question of no enemy or why we stayed on. We stayed on to get a pension. Nigel can't get more ridiculous than that. So I move now to maybe it's easier to deal with the poisoning. Or the story about the poisoning. The story about the poisoning. And nobody could explain it better than Dora herself. And the way I broached the subject, because I didn't want to call any names, I said that I overheard some people talking about it. But as Dora came on, Dora said, she told me, I didn't want to say that, I didn't want to call her name, and I didn't want to say what happened. I just said that there was this question of, they're saying that, you know, we should be poisoned. In fact, it was Tim who wanted the poison. Dora came to me and told me that. She said, a young lady, up to now, but you know, up to now, Dora didn't tell me who the young lady is, and I didn't ask her. She did not tell me, and I did not ask her, but she told me that story. That is when I went to Tim and I said, boy, Tim, this is not good, and we should stop eating in cabinet, because you just don't know what is going to happen. That's a serious threat. And Dora confirmed that on the radio yesterday. She said, she told me that. She said that. In fact, when I told the story first, I was making it a kind of vague and so on, because I said I overheard the story in the precincts of the cabinet chamber. So she thought I was saying that cabinet, you know, that this cabinet was involved. I didn't say cabinet was involved. I said Dora told. I didn't say Dora told me. I said I heard it. But she came on to confirm because she wanted it clarified, because her telephone started ringing to say that she was implicating the cabinet. And so she cleared it up to say that she told me that somebody, and she told me a number of people who heard where it was said and the interaction and what happened. It wasn't something in passing. She said she chastised the young lady and said that isn't right. And so we decided that we were not going to eat there. I mean, you're taking a risk. And so that is why we decided that we are not going to eat there anymore. So that's the poisoning story, right? And if you don't believe me, ask Dora. Because I only know how to tell the truth. I don't believe in spin. I am a fast bowler, pace. Straight ball, like what Dwyer used to bowl. Just straight. No turns. So I don't spin. The story, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So that is true. Now it comes to the impropriety, as Tony called it. I think she made a little error. Yeah. And this impropriety, I don't know, I didn't intend, I don't know why Tony bringing up this thing about my wife in this place, you know. But, no, it's all right, Tony, don't clarify. No, it's okay, it's okay.
Just the inference that you all have the skeletons in your life.
Yeah, okay. Well, That's not a skeleton. My wife is not a skeleton. She up and tongue walking downtown every day. A skeleton in the closet. My wife on the street more than me. In fact, when I go home, she ain't there. I just got to call her to ask her where she be. So, and I've never been in the habit of speaking about my wife, right? But I want to do that just to clear the air. I hope I really do not have to do that again. But no, you know, it is all right, you know. It is nice for the Prime Minister to talk about President Obama and his wife. That's a good thing, you know, how supportive President Obama's wife is to him, right? And all of that. I mean, I'm not going to talk about the other things about waiting. I'm just talking about how supportive. May bring up that. But how supportive. It was all right to how President Clinton, Hillary, how supportive and so on, and how independent and so on. But some can have a supportive, independent wife. It's good in America, but not in St. Kitts. The Lord Hillary Clinton and the Lord Michelle Obama for their brilliance and their independence and their charisma and all of that. But let me tell you something. Well, you all could, this is my view, right? And I'm sticking to this. Jean is one of the most able women in the Labour Party. And I'm saying that modestly. So, you know, but ask people who want to talk the truth. Ask all the ministers of government. Ask Timothy, ask Dwyer. Ask all those other ministers who Jean pull up, lead around. One of the most able women in the Labour Party. One of the most resourceful. I don't know a lot of people in the Labour Party who has Jean verbal and writing skills. I mean, what is the problem with these people? Why these people don't just grow up and get mature and raise the level of the debate? Eh?
Alex is a supportive wife too, you know.
I could say other thing about wife, you know, but me ain't gonna bother with them things here. I'll say it's because wife something, you know, okay. Yeah, but they're making joke. I am proud, extremely proud of the support and the assistance I get from my wife, not only my wife, but from my family, from my son and my wife, and my two daughters. I had two daughters before I was married. And I am they're part of my political outfit. And my political, they decided. In fact, I told Tony the story about who decided when I was going to leave this party. My son made that decision. Not my wife. My son, I asked the people in my campaign, asked my constituents about the involvement of my son in my political campaign and going forward. But I am a family man. And I'm extremely proud of the relationship with my family. I depend on them. There's no problem about making a decision for me. All my life, Tony, all my life, I have shown and demonstrated leadership skills from a schoolboy. I was my class captain. I was my community captain. I was my football team captain. I was the rivals captain. I was the national team captain. I was the national team coach and assistant coach. I went to university. I went to Ruskin College in Oxford. I got the prize for the most outstanding overseas student in 1979. I was the captain of the football team. I was the executive member of the overseas student organization. I went to Sussex. I was a member of SASA, the Sussex African Students Association. I was an executive member. I was the chairman of the residential advisors. I used to speak to the incoming students, when they're having orientation, I was selected by the university to speak, to have orientation to overseas students. All my life, I've demonstrated leadership qualities. As him said, that me want to be the leader of the team. Me the only person who want to be the leader of the unity team because me enable. Ask him. Ask him. Ask him. How much leader the unity team court? What they're trying to do is to create strife. It is well known that I have no aspiration to become the prime minister, and I have no aspiration to become the leader of this party, of this unity government. Everybody can be the leader. I know how to serve without being a position. I don't want titles and position, I want to serve. And that's what I'm here for. That is the story. Ain't able, all my life, I've demonstrated leadership qualities. I've been identified. Bradshaw identified me. I was the chairman of the Bradshaw Youth Center Committee. Bradshaw single-handed me. When Bradshaw, we got a lot of time now going on long. Until I don't give me the mic, you know. I'm going to finish now. Bradshaw, I was a member of the tourist board. Bradshaw put me on the tourist board with Kishu Ranchandani, Colin Pereiro, Lupinacci, Limo was the chairman. I mean, early, Bradshaw used to send for me to go on conferences. Early, I was the first youth coordinator of the St.Kitts-Nevis Labour Party. What are you talking about? What are those people? Why they don't just grow up? I mean, why they don't understand? Why they don't smell the coffee? Their time is come and gone. This is a new dispensation. They can't fit into this. They're not people. They're not people. I'm going to end by, I want to give this last story about Asim. There's a guy, what he named Jazza, this guy, Dwyer, who used to play, long calling name, it's time to call people name, so that they could know, so they could stop the foolishness. The country deserves better. Like you say, you don't give them the trophy for the views and anything, let them take that. Yeah. Nobody contesting them with that. But this story I want to leave it with the people about Asim. But I want on thing, you know, I want to follow on Nigel, boy. Yeah, no, okay. No, okay, we ignore him. Yeah. Asim, just to show you what Asim may not understand nothing about politics. There's this guy who used to play football. He's from St. Paul's. He's one of those people who they move up to East Bastille. No, not to Nevis, to East Bastille. He lives in St. Paul, but he moved up to East Bastille. Moved up to register in East Bastille, but he works in the water department. So he realized that there were some issues that he wanted to bring to the attention of his minister and his parliamentary representative. I mean, he lives in St. Paul, but that's his parliamentary representative. So he went in to ask him, and he said, you know, boss, I want to speak to you and so on about the issue. So the chair that Asim has behind his table was about there where the chair is. So the fellow said, well, let me just pull up the chair a little further, you know, chair a little far. I want to be more, you know, intimate, more, you know, close and so on. So the fellow pull up the chair. Asim tell him, move back my chair, boy, leave me chair where I put it. Where you bring up my chair for? You want nobody so close to me. Fellow said he started to look around for a hole to drop in. That is Asim talking about people ain't able. The man ain't even know how to deal with human beings. He has no human touch. Tell Asim them leave me, eh? This is serious business, serious times. The country wants to go forward. We are in a crisis that we need to get out of. And so basically, I just want to leave that. Tony, I hope I've answered the question on my wife, and that my wife being part of my decision making is not an impropriety. It's something that should be encouraged. And you know something, I should end on this, because normally, you know, it is difficult for politicians to, you know, it is challenging in family for politicians. And so I want to give myself credit for being able to, basically being able to handle family and politics. Handling family and politics is not easy. And so people shouldn't see that as something that is to be snuffed at and something to be ashamed of. People should support that and promote that.
Thank you very much, Val Henry from mybill.com. This is for MP Van Samry and Sean Richards. We've heard a lot today. We've heard a lot with the interviews that most of you have done via the media over the couple of weeks. But if you could, in very clear terms, say to the people who are listening to this press conference, who are watching it, what is in it for them? What is the benefit of they supporting a unity team, a unity government, whatever construct you want to categorize it as? Why should people vote for candidates who say that they would form a unity government? And specifically, in terms of the people of Nevis, what should be the motivating factor for the folks of Nevis to also buy into this whole concept of unity?
Good morning and thanks for your question. There are a number of different reasons why we're saying that persons should vote for a government of national unity. The Honorable Timothy Harris, in his remarks and in his comments, outlined some of those reasons. At the end of the day, when all of the coursing would have finished, there's still a number of issues affecting the residents of St. Kitts and Nevis. For example, we have the high cost of electricity. And if one was to refer to the resolution, the motion of no confidence resolution, which has been tabled before the Parliament, this is one of the very same issues that we speak to. And we know that there is need for a decrease in electricity, which the Prime Minister, Dr. Denzil Douglas, is not offering to the persons of St. Kitts and Nevis. We, the persons represented here this morning, we give our commitment that as part of a government of national unity, we will ensure that persons see a decrease in electricity rates here in St. Kitts and Nevis. We have spoken to the cost of living because we recognize that the cost of living in St. Kitts and Nevis is indeed very high. We see persons who go to the supermarket on a daily basis and can barely afford to buy the basic food necessities that they need. We are committed to ensuring that there is a decrease in the cost of food here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and there are various mechanisms by which this can be pursued. For example, it is our intention to look at the current rate of VAT and to see what, if any, reduction can be offered to persons. Additionally, you have such issues as electoral reform. The Honorable Sam Conde just outlined that there's a gentleman who lives in St. Paul's but who is registered in East Bastille. Wary of the fact that after the general elections in Nevis of 2011, I think it was, a challenge was mounted at the court, and the court agreed that there were a number of irregularities. I don't think I have to convince persons in the Federation that indeed we need true and meaningful electoral reform here in St. Kitts and Nevis, not reform which benefits one political party. By having a government of national unity with representatives from the various political parties, that will help to ensure that we get reform which is beneficial to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis and not to any single political party. We have spoken to such issues as term limits, and perhaps if we had term limits in place, we would not have had the present crisis where you have a minister of government who has mismanaged the financial affairs of this country to the extent that we have had to ask for debt forgiveness, and next issue which is mentioned in the motion of no confidence. the fact that we have lost some 1,200 acres of land throughout St. Kitts-Nevis. And again, if you want to zero in on the debt for land swap, here is a Prime Minister who came to Parliament, and the representative for the constituencies which were affected by this land swap were not even aware that land would be taken from their constituencies. With a government of national unity, you would have had, and you would have that sort of collaboration so that it doesn't come to a surprise from anyone across the political divide as to what is happening in their respective constituencies and what will ultimately affect their constituents. So, to go back to the issue of term limits, had that been in place, the present Prime Minister would have no longer been the Prime Minister. We have spoken about integrity in public life, and there is general consensus that under a government of national unity, integrity in public life would be one of the first pieces of legislation that would be passed. No longer must the citizens of our country continue to wonder where the finances of this country have been spent and whether or not ministers of government have personally benefited from contracts, be it for roads or other infrastructural development here in St. Kitts-Nevis. Constitutional reform, that's a question that we have had hanging over our heads for quite some time. And with a government of national unity, I do believe that it is much easier to obtain this from the point of view that there are certain sections of the Constitution which would require a 2/3 majority in order to get change. We know that here in St. Kitts-Nevis that it's very easy to make issues political, and so persons vote or support one issue not on the merit of the issue, but based on which political party they support. With persons here from CCM, with persons here from the Labour Party, with persons here from PAM, and we're still appealing for persons from NRP because we're open to such other persons. We do believe that it would be easier to convince the electorate here in St. Kitts-Nevis of certain meaningful changes which are indeed needed to move this country forward and to make it a better country for all of us living here in St. Kitts-Nevis.
I have the mic. I want to ask a question.
Yes, yes. The question was, what do we expect from supporting a government of unity for St. Kitts-Nevis? One of the most important things, and may I, Mr. Henry, go back to a question which Tony asked in respect of the quest for independence for Nevis, which we seem to have thrown up at us every time that there is any political discussion or any attempt to throw a diversion into any discussion on politics in St. Kitts-Nevis to make things better for the people of St. Kitts-Nevis. As I said earlier, provided that we are in the arrangement as it stands as a federation, that we have a responsibility to all the people when we speak and discuss issues which are of national interest in St. Kitts-Nevis. And I think that is something which I really would like to see our people accept and appreciate, that the Parliament of St. Kitts-Nevis, our national parliament, is where the matters and the business of national interest is discussed, and it has to be respected as such. In respect of any enactment of 113 in the Constitution, that will have to be something which the people of Nevis will move on when they feel correct. As it stands now, as a representative of the people and as Premier of Nevis for the time being, it is my duty, my responsibility, to ensure that the people of Nevis are so governed that they feel comfortable and that they know that they have a government and they have representatives. You have the Honorable Mark Brantley, who's leading the opposition here and part of that administration, that our foremost and overriding interest is to ensure that the people get a government which will make things better for them, and that we will ensure that they are not taxed into poverty, that their quality of life is improved year on year, that their children can feel comfortable knowing that there is integrity in government and that we will do things with transparency. The independence matter is something which we have never used as a political tool. When we enacted or invoked 113 in 1996, it was as a result of the disregard and the disrespect of Dr. Douglas for the rights, the constitutional rights of the people of Nevis, as is set out in the Constitution. And we had to do that to protect, and it was not an idle threat. It was not an idle threat. It was based on a fundamental principle that our rights as given in the Constitution are not to be trampled or disregarded by anyone, either in Nevis or St. Kitts. But that does not mean that we cannot collaborate. And what we are doing and what we must do in our federation is that there must be that respect for the constitutional rights of the people of Nevis, as set out in the Constitution in Chapter 6, I think it is. There also must be a respect for the representatives of the people of Nevis. Now, what can we expect and what would we want? We want from the future governance of St. Kitts-Nevis to have equity for the people of Nevis in this federal arrangement. We have looked over, and in my experience from 1983, sought to get that equity, especially in terms of revenue sharing, in terms of the federal government, which has responsibility for security and police and fire and defense generally, that the federal government must assume that responsibility and carry out that responsibility to the benefit of the people of Nevis. Right now in Nevis, the police are struggling with accommodation in the Newcastle police station, which really ought to be just pushed down. As a matter of fact, I'll say this, we have decided that it has to be demolished because the police are not comfortable. The electrical wiring, the place leaks, it is rusting to death, and therefore has to be done. But there's no regard for that by Dr. Douglas, who is the minister responsible for police and for defense and for security. We have a situation where the fire service in Nevis is in need, dire need of effective, efficient firefighting equipment. That has been totally disregarded. I know in speaking to one of the fire officers that there, quote unquote, is some plan to provide or to acquire a fire truck for Nevis. But as it stands right now, and we are talking now of all the years in the yard adjacent to the fire services accommodation, there are no fewer than 4 old, abandoned, useless appliances. I think it will also be good for us as well in Nevis to ensure that the electoral system is cleaned up. And I'm not here referring to this new supervisor of elections. I'm talking to a situation which exists in Nevis and may even exist in St. Kitts, where we have an assistant registration officer in Nevis who I have written repeatedly to the Prime Minister to have removed. This person is on a contract that was advised to the federal government or by the federal government. And I've had no response from the Prime Minister in respect to that person. In a face-to-face conversation on the 22nd of February, I raised that matter with the Prime Minister that I needed that officer removed because that officer is really an obstruction to the free registration of so many persons who have complaints over and over again. And in my conversation, and I've written him to this regard, in this regard, he says to me, well, can't you keep the person and try to turn the person? My response is that if that comment has been made, and not if, it was made, because yesterday I confirmed with one of the persons who was with me at the meeting in which that comment was made. I said it is even more reason that we have that person removed, because clearly that matter of turning speaks to a weakness in the character of the person, and we cannot have any electoral system which is being manned by someone who could be turned, who could be manipulated and influenced to do things which are not in accordance with the law of this country. So we expect that we will see a greater regard for the things relating to Nevis, and the electoral registration is important. That office must be manned and properly managed by people who are of the highest integrity, otherwise the whole system will be compromised, and we'll have a repeat, or we may have a repeat of what transpired not only in 2011, but I'm sure which transpired here in St. Kitts from 2004. We've had complaints of gerrymandering, we've had complaints of interference and illegal activity taking place. And these are the things which we feel are not only pertinent to Nevis, but are pertinent to the whole system or the whole Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. And I really want our people to put aside the divergence and the attempts to create confusion about the issues which are at hand. And the issues which are at hand are issues which deal with the integrity of the electoral system, the management, the proper management of the economy and the finances of St. Kitts and Nevis, the management of our environment, the management of our resources. Those matters are important, and we cannot allow the offers, and I don't know what will happen in the budget today. We're not there to debate it, but I gather that there may be goodies to the business sector, maybe a reduction in tax. That's fine. There may be reduction in taxes or other offers to the populace generally, to the domestic persons, to give them a little something. But we have to go beyond that. Our people must not allow themselves or ourselves to be constantly at the beck and call or at the behest of manipulative political leaders and governments. Because if we continue to persist and to allow that to be the order of the day, this perpetuation of this type of governance by handouts, making the people mendicants, this has to stop. And it can only stop if there's a change in the manner in which, in who manages. Because I said some time ago, I think when we had a press conference similarly, that anything that can come out of these discussions will be better than what we have at this time. And no amount of platitudes, and no amount of threats, and no amount of unfounded criticism and attacks on whether a person's character or person's attitudes will resolve the problems. It has to be that the people will make a determination that we have had enough of what we've had, and it's time to move forward with something new. And as a representative of the people, and as a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis, I think I reserve the right, with the support of my constituents and the people of Nevis, to seek to provide for them and for us all a better system, a better type of government, a transparent government, a government which is responsible, a government which has ideas to make things better for the people. I think that is what I look for out of this whole discussion, Mr. Henry.
I am not a journalist really, but I am a freelance columnist, emphasis on free. and I represent Operation Rescue. I'm glad to notice that we have the occasional presence of Special Branch here. I did not this was such an important event to the Prime Minister. I have a question for Mark Brantley. The question will be brief, and I trust the answer will similarly be. And I have a general question for all of the elected representatives. The question relates to something that Mr. Brantley said earlier. I'm paraphrasing him. I don't know if I got the sense of what he was saying. He's telling the GG, the Governor General, that U6 do not support the Prime Minister sufficient to make the argument that 2013 is different from 1993. The reason I ask the question is because while 6 of you might not support one of the representatives, the question I would have to ask is, so who do you support? Because if 6 of you do not support one man, who is the person, who is the alternative? Maybe 3 support one and 3 support the other, which leaves Denzil Douglas with 4 supporting him. So in my view, the process needs to be completed by indicating formally who you support as your leader for the purposes of your coalition intentions. The second question is, when will you be ready to take your supporters to the street? And when will you be ready to have public meetings as a team so that the public can start seeing and feeling your leadership and really sensing you as the alternative which you claim that you're supposed to be?
Can I ask you a question? Here's a question there.
You all want to ask your questions on that?
We've got another time.
Oh, okay, just very quickly. And it's actually not unrelated to Mr. Astafan's last question. And really, it is, if you think civil society can do more to improve the national dialogue and accountability, and if so, how can civil society, Mr. Brantley earlier, you spoke to the fact that it was up to the people, and I think all of you all have said something to that effect in one way or the other. What is it that the people need to or ought to be doing? Just briefly, it comes up, there's still people out there who are very distressed, some of your supporters, that you have chosen to not to attend the budget sitting. Do you feel any obligation at all to your constituents to have attended? And in particular to Mr. Harris and Mr. Condor, do you feel threatened? There's been quite a bit of conversation today and quite a bit of rhetoric again on the platform. The Prime Minister talking about people getting ready to rumble and put yourselves in protection mode, this sort of thing. Do you genuinely feel threatened, or do you think that this is just talk?
As we're wrapping up with follow-up questions, I also wanted to ask, will any of you respond to the budget, or will you just leave the whole budget as an illegitimate affair of the Prime Minister and there will be no response from you? And I would like you to also have a comment about your placard, or, well, placard may not be the right word, but your backing and banner back there that says, the elected majority fighting for democracy. When and if you take the people to the street, will that be your motto?
Could we get the final question from here, because we run out of time? Please.
Okay, thank you very much. One of the things that I remember in elections past was my remarks being made and promises being made by my good friend Timothy Harris, a former co-worker. And he spoke about in St. Kitts what was going to come under a new Labour administration. In fact, it was called the new Labour, actually, was going to be a new dispensation. And that was a promise that was made by the then government under the leadership of Prime Minister Denzil Douglas. The society has to determine whether that new dispensation actually came and if it was what was intended. So the question specifically to Timothy Harris, why are we to trust that this group of people are gathered before us are going to deliver on some sort of new dispensation which the people of St. Kitts, one, would recognize and be really pleased with? And I must suggest that all of you who gather here today recognized over the years what is wrong with the fabric of democracy in St. Kitts. And a lot of these issues point, I think, squarely to the issue of the Constitution, electoral reform, fundraising for electoral campaigns, which people might be influenced to use questionable means of raising funds in order to finance very expensive campaigns. We all know the problems, I believe. The question is, you've mentioned some of the problems yourself. How can the people of St. Kitts and Nevis really believe that you're going to deliver on promises which were made, some of them as much as 17 years ago, and have still not been delivered? Would you be prepared as a group to offer a position paper to the public that you would subscribe to having certain things done, the elemental aspects of a democracy be fixed within, let's say, 1 year? Thank you very much.
Yes, that's it. You want to go ahead? Just go ahead.
I want very quickly on the new dispensation. I believe in fact that is the reason why we are all here. The new dispensation has not been realized in the manner we would have liked. The new dispensation was to be about a new engagement of our citizens in political discourse, end of tribalism, etc., etc. You listen to the platform with Dr. Douglas said the tribalism prevails. Luckily for some and I, we are not part of that. And that is why, with all the years of our service to government, we can now come truthfully and sincerely and say the new dispensation can come with us. The new dispensation can certainly come with Timothy Harris, because, truth be told, I can't be part of any government that will victimize anyone. I myself have endured it. You'd be aware that when I was 19, I lost my job and so on and so on. That is part of the history. When I am 48, I lost my job to Dr. Douglas. Victimization was to have been an end, and that was to be part of the new dispensation. So having, as it were, received it from both sides, one can say it is no less a victimization, no less hurtful if it comes from Labour or PAM. And when you reach that position and place, you then can say, well, I will devote all, because none of our citizens really should have to endure victimization and any ill will on account of their political suasion. And that is why in the position that we have taken, we have emphasized citizenship, country above party. It is when we become locked in the party, and we have been locked within the party, that at times we allow things which we know to be wrong, at times to be unfair. We say in the name of the party we will not create any disturbance. We will see how things we will come. We will speak behind the closed doors and say, well, we would have preferred that would not have happened. And there will be no public disagreement from that. I believe that kind of approach to governance leads to a failure of the collective conscience of the people. And when there is an absence of a collective conscience, or consciences of those people are put in government, all manner of grievances can prevail. We don't have to be caught up with that, because as I said, for me now moving forward, it must be my God first, my country, and all that we can do to bring a new era of engagement, a new era of empowerment of the people could be done. The close ties which we have forged and the greater understanding of the situation in Nevis, our friendships with Premier Amri and his deputy and so on, have brought an even sharper insights into some of the real challenges as perceived by Nevisians. We could therefore make the commitment to that expression of an equitable and fair arrangement between St. Kitts and Nevis. Maybe for me, with a father from Nevis, Cotton Ground to be exact, and an Nisbet clan, large and brown in Nevis, and a mother of Kittitian stock, it is easy for me to understand the imperative of St. Kitts-Nevis working together, and some of the transgressions which have prevailed, that they ought not to. Maybe for me as a Minister of Finance formally, to have sat in discussions with Premier Parry and others of his team, and hear them ask for greater disclosure with respect to the VAT arrangements, I understood where they were coming from. I understood and in fact said clearly when the argument was being put in conference that there could be, from an accounting point of view, an easy way of determining the sum totals of revenues that were being accumulated on the VAT in Nevis in reference to those in St. Kitts. Because there was a period of time where the NIA was bringing more money into the national coffers relative to the arrangement which we are working, and therefore there was a net leakage, if you wish, of resources into the Federal Consolidated Fund. I could understand, having heard Parry and they look at the situation of, say, Four Seasons vis-a-vis the Marriott with its exemptions, and what that meant to the pool that was being contributed. And I could see fairness and equity in the argument. Not everyone could. So the experience, I think, has, in some ways, is a benefit in moving forward. And I trust my instinct, my commitment, my sense of sincerity to be part of this new dispensation to which you refer, sir. Because I believe in the end, it is all that is left for the country. How dare we return to the partisan approach to politics that have left so many people in pain, in hurt? And if for nothing else, because we see what it can do and it has done, I believe we owe it to ourselves to try something else, because we continue along the same old path and don't expect any difference. And the matter of security, yes, I am concerned for my security. And I ought to be seriously concerned about my security, because we are dealing with a leader who doesn't care, who is evil-some. And the language and his platform provokes and invokes nothing but evil. It's a language of divisiveness. It is a language of blood on their hands. It is a language that I can incite. It's a language of calling out to war. As good citizens who love the land of beauty and peace which we want to abound, I'm certainly concerned that the Prime Minister, and I would want to draw attention to the Commissioner of Police to take serious note of the rhetoric of the Prime Minister and the consequences for orderly conduct of people, particularly as we draw nigh to an election. I would want to draw the attention of the Commissioner of Police to the fact that in his records at the police station have formally made clear that threats against my person, threats to do me harm, have been made and they have been reported. I am aware that the very person about whom those threats were made had, subsequent to those threats, been issued with a firearm. So I am concerned. I am concerned when the Prime Minister directs the removal of floodlights from the vicinity where I live, after they've been there and had been put there not on request by me, but by request by the police several years back. I am concerned. And while I am concerned, truthfully, I will not live my life in fear, because I believe in a good God of mercy and of grace. And all these manifestations of evil that the Prime Minister would like to have pursued against Dr. Harris, they will come to naught, because it is a promise that no weapons form against me shall prosper. So I am very much concerned about security, and I should also be. Because let's bear in mind, no matter the talk about the significant reduction in homicides, and there has been, St. Kitts-Nevis, for the record, still has one of the highest per capita homicide rates in the Caribbean region. I repeat that. As significant as the reductions were, and this year already, we are already up, I think, 40% in homicide rates relative to last year. But the way we are going, St. Kitts-Nevis still has one of the worst record per capita in homicides. Trek in Antigua, see how many they have had for their population. Trek in Grenada, see how many they have had for their population. Trek in Dominica, and you'd see what I mean, the numbers, though small, when expressed in comparative terms. So in the context of that, one ought to be concerned. In the context of the incident to which the Premier of Nevis referred, involving one of his ministers, one ought to be concerned. But most importantly, in the context of the loose, irresponsible, inciting statements coming from our outgoing Prime Minister, all of us ought to be concerned about the state, the safety, and stability of our country. And so it is in that context that I register my concern. And the last point I want to make in a half minute, time me, is that we need a new dispensation, truthfully. Because when you have a people-centered government, which is the one we are articulating, we will remember our people every day, 24 hours a day. That is a kind of service to which we commend ourselves and will hold ourselves responsible to. We will not just remember the roads need fixing when it's election time. You see them busy in Bastille, you see them busy everywhere. Perhaps they forget there's a community called Molyneux and Lodge Project and so on, and Lodge Village, which has roads to be fixed, and maybe that part of the victimization for their long, loyal support to Harris. We must remember our people at all times. For many years, the corporate sector had been promised a reduction in their corporation tax. They are being remembered now in an election year. Our people, our local businesses ought to be remembered at all times, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, except in a leap year. That is a commitment we must make. Thank you.
If I may, I can't recall ever sitting in a press conference and not getting an opportunity to say something, as so many persons today have had so much to say. But I think it is important to add a line to what you say, Dr. Harris, about this new dispensation, because it is an opportunity in this new dispensation, having come from different parties, different organizations, to collaborate, to communicate, and build consensus on getting things done.
Yeah.
That is why it will work, because it's not the dictatorial approach in determining what happens when it happens. And that is why we're asking the public to give this the opportunity to see this new dispensation at work, to deliver the services that are good for all or the majority of the people in St. Kitts-Nevis. Now, the primary reason why we were here, and we don't sit here as the new dispensation yet, we are here sitting as the elected representatives. The elected representatives of the parliament. We get the new dispensation when the election is done and we have more persons in office as well. But as the elected majority, we are here advising that as we speak, conduct is being undertaken, is being done by the Prime Minister and his cabinet that is in further violation of our constitutional rights. Because as we speak, the proceeding on a budget, when it is only the minority of the elected members who are pushing forward the agenda of this country, the majority sits here and say, we want a different direction. And as we speak to you, I happened to listen on my radio a while ago, and I recognize that a resolution was passed in the House this morning to authorize, if you will, the laying of the estimates which should have been laid by the 1st of March. Having passed that resolution, in my view, I can venture to say I don't think it has been properly done, because the section which is violated is one of those enshrined parts of the Constitution. And just passing a resolution to do what you were supposed to do constitutionally borders on more violation of the Constitution by the Prime Minister and his cabinet. That is why we took the matter to court. That is why we're asking the court to make certain declarations, because we believe that our rights are violated, and as such, the rights of the people whom I represent and whom we all represent, those rights are being violated. And it is that which brings us today to tell you quite clearly why we have decided not to give any support to the budget presentation by the present administration. Barring other activity that could be disruptive, we have come to the public again to advise that we are the elected majority and that we should be the government, or the present government must immediately go to an election and let us determine who leads the federation going forward.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have been given the honor of bringing this press conference to a close. In doing so, let me thank the persons from the media for turning out this morning and for your questions. Additionally, we also want to extend our gratitude to the freelance journalists that we have had here, to the cameramen, and also to the photographers and to the listening public. This morning, we came here to speak to you collectively as to why we took a decision to boycott the budget session which began in Parliament this morning. However, as time goes on, we intend to come back and speak to the media and also to the Federation of St. Kitts-Nevis on a number of different issues. We intend to be back here, not necessarily at OTI, but in similar press conferences to outline our policies, be it on the cost of living and how we intend to bring about a reduction in the price of food, electricity, and our taxes. We intend also to address such issues as how we intend to stamp out victimization in government. We haven't had any questions in regard to the SIDF, but certainly we do have a view in regards to the SIDF and the fact that that fund has no parliamentary oversight or scrutiny, and this must come to an end. We intend to speak to you about how we intend to create a more conducive economic climate for our struggling businesses. Additionally, how do we intend to empower young people and to develop meaningful training programs for our young people? We do not intend to be part of a government which only comes before an election with short-term work programs such as YES and PEP. but we want to ensure that our young people in particular are adequately trained and that we have the right economic environment to ensure that they are able to find long-term permanent jobs here in St. Kitts and Nevis. We have had questions about leadership, and in time we will answer that particular question as to who it is intended or who has been identified to be the leader of the unity government. Additionally, in regards to the question about joint public meetings, that also will be answered very, very shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, it is quite clear that this country is moving in the wrong direction, and it must be placed on a path of sustainable development and growth. The vast majority of our people feel that under the current administration, things will only get worse. We, the majority of elected representatives, are here to give you hope. We are here to fight on your behalf to restore democracy in St. Kitts and Nevis, to bring about a better standard of living, and to ensure that the people who we represent are represented throughout the entire term of government and not just during a general election. The People's Action Movement, individually and collectively, along with the other parties represented here, CCM and Labour, we are all committed to the people and ensuring that their welfare is properly looked after. Thank you.